a tragic event taking place with that Air India Dreamliner 7878 that has tragically crashed moments after takeoff there in Ahmedabad. It was headed towards London, but certainly judging by the kind of pictures, judging by the kind of images that we have seen, really the impact of that particular crash, very unlikely possibility of the survivors at the moment. We know that at least 133 people have been confirmed dead, including the crew as well as the pilots. A total of 242 passengers who are aboard that particular aircraft is the information coming in. But a few hours before this particular aircraft touched down in Ahmedabad, there is a passenger who has posted tweets talking about the condition, the state of affairs as far as this particular aircraft is concerned. Remember that there's been a lot of discussion surrounding the safety of the Dreamliner 7878 itself. All right, let's take this across to our guest now. Joining us with us is Sarosh Damania, aviation expert. Also with us is Captain Sanjay Karve, aviation expert. Air Vice Marshal Nitin Vaidya, ATC expert, also joining us on the show this evening. Let me come across to you, Sarosh Damania. Very tragic turn of events there in Ahmedabad, and we certainly cannot go completely by what this particular passenger is saying. But the point being made over here is there have been complaints from passengers about the kind of standards that are maintained inside the quality of aircraft as far as Air India is concerned for quite some time now. It's not happening for the first time. The big question, though, is that can the same be said as far as maintenance standards are concerned, because there are government regulators who look at those aspects. How are you looking at this particular post, Mr. Damania?
No. As far as there has to be some issue with the aircraft. The 787 is one of the finest aircraft Boeing produces. And suddenly, just after takeoff crashing, of course, there has to be, as we stated, of course, even the video, it's maybe about the interiors or something. But as far as maintenance of the aircraft is also concerned, there has been a global shortage of parts also recently. So there are airlines are struggling to get parts for replacements and repairs of aircraft also. And of course, it is a known fact that Air India was struggling with the 787 aircrafts. They had got a lot of aircrafts which were under maintenance after the Tata Group has taken over. So their main motive was hastily first to get as many aircrafts as flying in the air to generate more revenue. So they have, in a short span of time, monetized the parked or the aircrafts which were not working and repaired them and put them in the air. But we don't know of course, the quality of maintenance is concerned, the certification, what is concerned. Of course, basic certification is required to fly an aircraft. But what happens, there is a minimum standard required. So might be because of the shortage of parts or because the unavailability in the global market itself, the aircraft might be at the bare minimum just crossing the threshold to fly. So that is one more very major safety aspect. I think DGAC also should immediately look into it. They should immediately review the maintenance measures being done at Air India. They should review all aircrafts are properly maintained, properly serviced, they are following their service and they are fit to fly. Because there has to be some, of course, now from the details, it was just a mayday call in the aircraft crash. We don't know what was the actual cause of the crash right now. But of course, certainly aircraft just after takeoff.
It could be a technical failure. Was there any mechanical failure? Was it a human error? Were there other conditions or circumstances owing to weather, etc.? We don't know. Unlikely that weather, of course, would have played a part is what we understand. But let me bring in Captain Sanjay Karve at this point of time, who's an aviation expert. Captain Sanjay Karve, already we are told, and there are reports that are emerging, that FAA was already looking at certain points coming out from an ex-employee of Boeing who was talking about certain fasteners between panels which could come loose after thousands of hours of flying. Now, is there essentially a problem there that could perhaps merit an investigation, or is that something that could have possibly happened as far as this Ahmedabad crash is concerned in your view? Captain Karve.
Okay, I've heard of that. I don't know whether we can link that particular incident if FAA is looking after the lapses with Boeing. But if you throw back your mind to 1997, when Boeing took over McDonnell Douglas, most of the problems in Boeing have started after that. Because Boeing, instead of turning McDonnell Douglas into Boeing culture, they adapted the McDonald's culture where safety was not so paramount and the bottom line of the balance sheet became the prime issue as far as the company is concerned. Until then, Boeing's stress was always on quality. It was never on maintaining that structure. Whereas the other company, like the standard practice in Boeing was people who rose to the top, they always came from the bottom up. So they knew exactly what were the shortcomings, what is required to be done. Whereas with the new culture which stepped in, they started taking in people from everywhere outside. There were people who came in with not much of aviation experience or with limited aviation experience related only to finance. Now, if I'm a finance guy, I'm more interested in showing the board that how I have got profits. I'm really not interested in the safety concern because I'm working on the law of probability. It is unfortunate that it's the Air India 787 which has got caught into that 1 in a million thing. But if you look at that picture, it appears loss of thrust, and it also appears that the captain of the aircraft has tried its best to keep the aircraft flying because the aircraft seems to be maintaining its flight. I just have a suggestion. There's an AI generated image which is going on onto your site constantly. It is a 747 which is being shown with 4 engines. So my request is, let us not confuse the issue. We are having 787 which has crashed, and more often than not, what I can see is a live footage of a 787 followed by AI generated image of a 747. It would send a wrong signal. As far as this particular incident is concerned, Ahmedabad has got a fairly long runway.
I completely agree with you, and we will try and get that corrected at the earliest. I'll speak to my colleagues, and we'll certainly ensure that no wrong representative images are used, if at all they are being used. Thank you so much for pointing that out, Captain Karve. But let me also bring in at this point of time Air Vice Marshal Nitin Vaidya. Air Vice Marshal Nitin Vaidya, judging by the kind of response and the communication with the ATC, where the pilots declared Mayday, and there really perhaps wasn't enough time for them to do much, is what one understands, or at least what one can glean from the information available. I believe they have followed all protocols that they possibly could have. What really, in your view, would have happened in that cockpit in those last moments? Marshal Vaidya.
The very fact that the pilot gave a mayday call within the minute of departure, obviously, and I am not too certain as to whether he mentioned that there is a loss of thrust, but at some point of time, people have mentioned on your channel or some other channel that there has been a loss of thrust, because of which obviously the aircraft cannot gain height. If that be so, then obviously they have got quite busy in the cockpit, due to which I think they have not been able to devote enough time to raise the undercarriage. Because you have not been able to raise the undercarriage, obviously there has been a drag effect on the aircraft. And if you see the way the aircraft has mushed into the ground, at the last moment the pilot has put the nose up, which also has increased the drag effect. So obviously there is something that has gone wrong so drastically that the pilots have entirely got into trying to control the attitude of the aircraft, as well as trying to probably revive the aircraft, because of which these things have come out in the public domain as to why the undercarriage was not raised and why the nose of the aircraft did tilt upwards just before the crash. But I suppose why the exact reason of is to be attributed as to why there is a loss of thrust and in both the engines simultaneously is something I don't want to speculate. Let the things come out as far as the black box is concerned. But let me tell you, Madhavji, the fact that this aircraft has been a robust aircraft, it's been flying since 2012. With Air India, this aircraft has been there since 2014. And the maintenance of the aircraft, I don't want to speculate any doubts for the very fact that unless the aircraft is airworthy, there is no pilot that is going to touch the aircraft and start the aircraft. The very fact that it has managed to gain height of 600 feet and 1 minute of mayday call, there is a lot of questions to be answered, and I have got no answers at this point of time. Let things come out in the black box, and things will be far more clearer. I wish I had access to the cockpit voice recorder.
Certainly.
Between the pilot and the ATC, I would have been able to give you more insights.
Right. Certainly, of course, the points that you made are very, very true. It is ultimately going to be for the investigators to establish where things went wrong, because somewhere there is a serious possibility of there being a technical failure here. But let me bring in Sarosh Damania on a point that was made earlier by Captain Karve. He has, in fact, articulated very clearly the troubles that Boeing has been going through. and it has been documented. We have seen the FAA action and clearly, of course, focus on profits rather than sacrificing on safety. Those have been some of the concerns that have been expressed in the past, and in the recent past we've seen serious issues with the 737 MAX, which had to be grounded throughout the world, and later after a long gap in fact was finally up in the air again. Various other issues including various sensor issues, etc., that have been reported time and again. Sarosh Dabania, how much of a possibility is it that it could be that aspect, or is it something else that we're looking at? As you said, this particular aircraft has not had any serious crashes in the recent past as well.
No, see, as far as the history of Boeing is concerned and the recent developments over there is a very well-known fact out there before the world. They have been having issues with their safety concerns. There were lapse of safeties over there. There were issues with the components in the aircraft. There was one of their most selling aircraft, the 737, was grounded in a lot of countries, including India, for a certain period of time. And of course, 787 also has been their new product. This is not based on some old aircraft. It is a brand new aircraft which they was designed and made by Boeing. But understanding is that they might have some cut some corners. Of course, later on there were rectifications done. There were lapses found. They have done. There were certain, always like in manufacturing process, if there is a issue, they will maybe recall and they will maybe replace the parts. But certain times, this is a pretty old aircraft. It is a 2012 aircraft. It is not a recent new aircraft. So, of course, the thorough maintenance has to be done. As I told you, another major issue is the global parts shortage, which is there, which is also being faced by all the airlines around the world. It is not just India, it's all around the world. So there are shortages of parts. So maybe schedule change of parts or maybe something. Now, of course, as Captain told, we cannot be without the black box. We cannot come to a conclusion. Was it an engine failure or was it a technical issue? But of course, what we can do is what probable cause could happen. That is what we could discuss. Of course, one of the issues is now usually also aircrafts even can fly on one engine.
All right. We'll have to leave it there, sir. We'll have to leave it there. Certainly, there are serious questions about what has transpired. Sarosh Dabania as well as Captain Sanjay Karve, Air Vice Marshal Nitin Vaidya. I'd like to thank all three of you for joining us and breaking this down for our viewers as far as this tragic crash that has taken place in Ahmedabad is concerned. Slipping in. Minutes after takeoff, the ill-fated Air India aircraft crashed into a nearby medical college hostel building. Now, this has left at least 20 students injured, is what we were told. We were also told that the parts of the aircraft could be seen atop that particular hostel building. Several of the students were later rushed to a nearby hospital. Listen in to what the mother of one of the students had to say.
मेरा लड़का है ना, वो ब्रेक पड़ा था खाने का, तो हॉस्टल में खाने गया था इधर, और हॉस्टल में ही प्लेन क्रैश हुआ, पर मेरे लड़का को कुछ हुआ नहीं, बात हुई मेरी, पर इसके भाईबंद हैं ज्यादा हुए तो लोग मर गए, ये फिर मेरे लड़का को देखने जाना है अंदर मेरे को।
अभी क्या लड़के को क्या सिचुएशन है?
लड़का बोला है कि मैं अच्छा दूसरे माल से कूदा था ना, तो थोड़ा खाली लगा है, ऐसा बोला है मेरे को, पर मैं जाऊँ अंदर तो मालूम पड़े ना।
घर में बैठा था, एकदम से आवाज आया, भूकंप जैसा लगा, बाहर आया तो धुआं मालूम नहीं था, मेरे पेरेंट केस हुआ, ऐसा मालूम नहीं था। फिर यहाँ पे आए, फिर मालूम चला।
यहाँ के क्या देखा आपने?
यहाँ के पेरेंट केस हुआ है, बॉडी बहुत सारी पड़ी है।
Slipping into a very quick break, more news and updates on the other side. Stay tuned.